Kestrel's hands trembled as the auctioneer's gavel crashed down for the third time. Sold to the gentleman in the back for $800. The crowd of weathered faces turned to see who had bid such an astronomical sum for a woman's indenture. Contract, but Kestrel kept her eyes fixed on the splintered wooden platform beneath her feet. $800. More than most men in Copperwell earned in 2 years. She'd expected to go for maybe 50, enough to cover her father's gambling. Debts to the saloon owner. Heavy boots approached, spurs jangling against the dusty boards. When she finally looked up, steel-gray eyes met hers beneath the brim of a black hat. The man was younger than she'd feared, maybe 30, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that spoke of honest work. But there was something dangerous in the set of his jaw, something that made the other men step aside as he passed. "Name's Coyote Ravenscroft," he said, his voice low as thunder before a storm. "You'll be working my ranch outside town?" The auctioneer handed over the contract papers with a nervous laugh. "Mighty generous bid there, Ravenscroft. Most folks looking for kitchen help don't pay near that much." Coyote's eyes never left Kestrel's face. "I wasn't bidding for kitchen. Help." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Kestrel felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she lifted her chin. She wouldn't cower, not even now. "I can cook and clean and mend," she said steadily. "I've been doing it since I was 12. "Good." Coyote folded the papers and tucked them into his vest pocket. "Because you'll be doing all of that. Among other things," his gaze swept over her once, appraising. "Get your belongings. We leave now. I don't have any belongings." Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe pity, and I guess. "We leave now anyway." He turned and walked toward a black stallion tied to the hitching post. Kestrel followed, acutely aware of every eye upon her. The townspeople whispered behind their hands, speculating about what Coyote Ravenscroft wanted with an indentured woman when everyone knew he lived alone on his ranch. 15 miles from the nearest neighbors, they reached his horse. Coyote swung up into the saddle with fluid grace. He extended his hand down to her. "Can you ride? Not like a lady?" The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Good thing I'm not looking for a lady." She grasped his hand, and he pulled her up behind him with surprising gentleness. The horse was massive, black as midnight, and she had to wrap her arms around Coyote's waist to keep from sliding off. "Hold tight," he said, and spurred the horse. Forward, they rode out of Copperwell as the sun began to set, painting the sky the color of fresh blood. Kestrel didn't look back at the ramshackle town that had been her prison for 23 years. Instead, she pressed her cheek against Coyote's broad back and wondered what kind of devil's bargain she'd just become part of. The ranch house materialized. Out of the twilight, like something from a dream or a nightmare, the Ravenscroft Ranch sprawled across the valley between 2 ridges, its main house built of dark timber and fieldstone that seemed to absorb the dying light. Smoke curled from the chimney, and warm yellow light spilled from the windows. But something about the place made Kestrel's skin prickle with unease. "Welcome to Shadowmere," Coyote said as they approached the front porch. "Your new home." She slid down from the horse before he could help her, her legs unsteady after the long ride. "Shadowmere. It's a strange name for a ranch. Strange things happen here." He dismounted and began unsaddling his horse. "You'll learn." The front door opened, and an elderly Mexican woman stepped onto the porch. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her dark eyes assessed Kestrel with uncomfortable intensity. "Esperanza," Coyote called. "This is Kestrel. She'll be staying." "Sir." "Sinner. I prepared the room as you asked." Esperanza's accent was thick, but her English was precise. "Dinner is ready when you are." Kestrel frowned. He'd told his housekeeper to prepare a room. "How did you know you'd win the auction?" Coyote paused in his unsaddling. "I always get what I want." His tone was matter-of-fact, without arrogance. "And I wanted you." The words sent an unexpected shiver through her. "Why?" Instead of answering, he handed the horse's reins to a young ranch hand who'd appeared from the barn, Domingo Ticnochi. "To his stall, give him extra oats." He turned to Kestrel. "Esperanza will show you to your room. We'll talk after dinner." The inside of the house was nothing like Kestrel had expected. Instead of rough frontier furnishings, she found polished, hardwood floors covered with intricate rugs, walls lined with books, and furniture that spoke of wealth and education. Oil paintings in heavy frames depicted landscapes she didn't recognize, mountains shrouded in mist, forests that seemed to move in the flickering lamplight. "This way, Mia," Esperanza said, leading her up a carved staircase. "Senor Coyote, he has been waiting for you for a long time." "Waiting for me? But he didn't even know me before today." Esperanza's laugh was dry as autumn leaves, didn't he? She opened a door at the end of the hall, revealing a bedroom that took Kestrel's breath away. The bed was enormous, carved from what looked like a single piece of dark wood and covered with quilts in deep jewel tones. Fire crackled in the fireplace, and fresh wildflowers sat in a vase on the dressing table. "This can't be for me," Kestrel whispered. "This dude is yours." Esperanza moved to the wardrobe and opened it, revealing dresses in fine fabrics, wool, silk, cotton, and colors Kestrel had never owned. "These are for you also. I don't understand. I'm indentured. I'm supposed to sleep in the kitchen or the barn, not here." Esperanza's eyes were kind but serious. "Here you are, something else. Something important." She moved toward the door, then paused. "A word of warning, Mia. Senor Coyote is a good man, but he is not ... ordinary. Neither is this place. Keep your wits about you." She left Kestrel alone with her spinning thoughts, and a growing certainty that she'd stumbled into something far more complex than simple indenture. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have graced a mansion. In Charleston or Richmond, crystal glasses caught the candlelight, and silverware clinked against china plates as Kestrel tried to navigate the unfamiliar territory of fine dining. She'd eaten with her hands or from wooden bowls her entire life. Coyote sat across from her, still in his work clothes, but somehow managing to look perfectly at ease among the elegance. He watched her struggle with the multiple forks with an expression that might have been amusement. "Tell me about yourself," he said, cutting into his steak with practiced precision. "Not much to tell. My father gambled away everything we had, including me. You bought me. Now I'm here." She kept her voice steady, though her hand shook slightly as she lifted her water glass. "That's what happened. Not who you are." Kestrel set down her fork and met his gaze directly. "Who I am doesn't matter anymore, does it? I'm your property? For the next 7 years? 7 years is a long time." His voice was soft, almost contemplative. "Long enough to change everything? Long enough for what, exactly?" "What do you want from me, Mr. Ravenscroft?" It was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. "Have you ever felt like you were meant for something more than the life you were born into?" The question caught her off guard. "Every day." "Have you ever had dreams that felt more real than your waking life?" Her breath caught. Since childhood, she'd been plagued by vivid dreams of running through moonlit forests, of voices calling her name on the wind, of a sense of belonging to something wild and free. But she'd never told anyone about them. How could you possibly know that? Coyote leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. "Because I've been having the same dreams. Dreams of you." The candles flickered as if touched by an unfelt breeze. Gripped the edge of the table, her heart hammering against her ribs. "That's impossible, is it?" He reached across the table and touched her hand. The moment his skin met hers, images flashed through her mind, herself running through silver grass, laughing as the wind whipped her hair, Coyote calling her name across vast distances. The two of them standing beneath a full moon, hands clasped, promising things she couldn't quite remember. She jerked her hand away, gasping. What was that? Recognition. He stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the darkened valley. "This land has power, Kestrel. Old power. It calls to certain people, draws them here. I was called 20 years ago, a broken young man with nothing but rage and grief. The land healed me, changed me, made me what I needed to become. And what's that?" He turned back to her, and in the candlelight his face looked younger, more vulnerable. "Someone worthy of what was promised to me. I don't understand any of this. You will." He moved toward her and she tensed, but he merely pulled out her chair as she stood. "Esperanza will show you the ranch tomorrow. learn its rhythms, its secrets, and tonight. I paused, his hand hovering near her cheek without quite touching. Tonight, dream and remember. As he left her standing in the dining room, Kestrel touched the spot where his hand had almost rested. Her skin tingled, and deep in her chest, something long dormant began to stir. Kestrel woke before dawn with the taste of silver, moonlight on her tongue and the echo of howling in her ears. The dreams had come again, more vivid than ever, dreams of racing through pine forests on 4 legs instead of 2, of hunting beneath stars that seemed close enough to touch, of a wild freedom she'd never known but desperately craved. She dressed quickly in one of the simple work dresses from the wardrobe and made her way downstairs. The house was quiet, but she could smell coffee brewing and followed the scent to the kitchen. Esperanza stood at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. She looked up as Kestrel entered, her dark eyes knowing. The dreams, they are getting stronger. No? How do you? Kestrel shook her head. Does everyone on this ranch know things they shouldn't? We know what the land tells us. Esperanza ladled cornmeal mush into a bowl and handed it to Kestrel along with a cup of coffee. Eat. You will need your strength today. Esperanza. What? Is this place really? And don't tell me it's just a ranch. The older woman was quiet for a long time, seeming to weigh her words. Many years ago, before the white men came, this valley was sacred to the native people. They said it was a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where spirits could take physical form, where magic lived in the very earth. You're talking about fairy tales? Am I? Esperanza's smile was sad. Then explain the dreams, Mia. Explain why you have been having them since you were a child, long before you ever heard of this place or Son or Coyote. Kestrel's spoon clinked against the bowl as her hand trembled. I never told anyone about the dreams. You didn't have to. We who belong to this place, we find each other eventually. The back door opened, and Coyote entered, his clothes damp with morning mist. He nodded to Esperanza and took the coffee she offered him, his eyes finding Kestrel's immediately. Ready to see your new world? She followed him outside into a dawn that painted the valley in shades of pearl and rose gold. The ranch was larger than she'd realized. She could see cattle dotting distant pastures, horses running free in fenced paddocks, and several outbuildings she hadn't noticed in the darkness. But it was the forest that drew her attention. It stretched up the mountainsides on either side of the valley, dark pines that seemed to whisper secrets to each other in the morning breeze. Something in her chest pulled toward those trees with an intensity that was almost physical. Beautiful, isn't it? Coyote's voice was soft beside her. It feels ... She struggled for the word. Alive, because it is. He began walking toward the barn, and she fell into step beside him. Everything here is alive in ways most people don't understand. The land, the trees, the very air. And some of us are more alive here than we ever were anywhere else. They spent the morning touring the ranch. Coyote introduced her to the hands Domingo, who tended the horses, Miguel the cattle, Foreman, and several others whose names blurred together. All of them treated her with a respect that seemed oddly formal for someone who was supposed to be an indentured servant. But as the day wore on, Kestrel found herself drawn again and again to the forest edge. Each time she looked toward the trees, the pulling sensation in her chest grew stronger. Go ahead, Coyote said finally. They were standing near the horse paddock, and he'd been watching her gaze drift to the tree line for the dozenth time. Go where? Into the woods. They're calling you. That's ridiculous. We stepped closer, close enough that she could smell leather and pine soap and something wilder underneath. Is it? Or are you just afraid to find out what you really are? Challenge in his voice sparked something fierce in her chest. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the forest, her steps quickening as she approached the first line of trees. Behind her, they heard Coyote call softly, "Don't go too far, and trust your instincts." Then she stepped into green shadow, and the world changed around her. The moment Kestrel crossed the threshold into the forest, every sense sharpened to an impossible degree. She could hear the heartbeat of a rabbit 30 yards away, smell the exact trail a deer had taken through. The underbrush hours earlier Feel the individual footsteps of insects walking across fallen leaves. The world exploded into layers of sensation she'd never experienced before. She stumbled, pressing her hands against a massive pine tree to steady herself. The bark felt warm beneath her palms, almost alive. No, not almost. It was alive, pulsing, with an energy that resonated through her bones. Welcome home. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Carried on wind that tasted of snow and starlight, Kestrel spun around, searching for its source, but saw only the dancing shadows between the trees. You have been away too long, daughter. Who's there? Her voice echoed strangely in the green cathedral of the forest. Show yourself, instead of. In answer, images began to flood her mind. She saw herself as a child, younger than she could consciously remember, playing in meadows under a full moon. A woman with silver hair and eyes like winter storms knelt beside her, teaching her to read, the language written in star patterns. A man who looked remarkably like Coyote, but somehow older, more primal, watched from the forest edge with fierce pride. Remember? The voice whispered. Remember who you were before they made you forget. The images shifted, showing her a different time, a different place. A desperate woman fleeing through the night carrying a crying infant. Pursuers with torches and crosses, shouting words like witch and demon spawn. The woman reaching a crossroads where an ordinary-looking man waited with kind eyes and gentle hands. Take her, the woman sobbed, pressing the baby into his arms. Raise her as human. Let her forget what she is until it's safe for her to remember. If that day never comes, the man asked, then at least she'll be alive. Kestrel gasped, her legs giving out as she slid down the tree trunk to sit on the forest floor. The man in the vision, she knew that face. Older, lined with work and worry, but unmistakable.
Ice.
Her father. The man she'd always thought was her father. Not. Your blood, father, the voice confirmed gently. But he loved you as his own. He tried to keep you safe by keeping you ordinary. But you were never meant to be ordinary, daughter. What am I? She whispered. The answer came not in words, but in feeling. A wildness that had always lived at the edge of her consciousness. Connection to moon and star and growing things that she'd pushed down and denied. She thought of all the times she'd known things she shouldn't know, felt drawn to places she'd never seen. Dreamed dreams that felt like memories. You are what your mother was. What her mother was before her. You were of the old blood, the first people who walked between worlds. Around her, the forest began to change. Or maybe she was finally seeing it as it truly was. Light danced between the leaves in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Flowers bloomed in fast-forward motion and faded to seed in moments. The trees themselves seemed to lean closer, listening. And now you have found your way home. Now you have found him, Coyote, the guardian, the one who has waited, the one who will help you become what you truly are. Footsteps approached through the underbrush, and Kestrel looked up to see Coyote emerging from behind a cluster of aspens. But something was different about him. His movements were too fluid, too predatory. His eyes held depths that seemed older than his face, and around him, the very air seemed to shimmer with barely contained power. You're beginning to remember, he said, and his voice carried harmonics that resonated in her chest. What are we? She asked. He knelt beside her, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his gray eyes. We're what humans become when they stop forgetting magic. He held out his hand. Come back to the house. There's something you need to see. She let him pull her to her feet, but as they walked back through the forest, she felt the wildness stirring stronger in her chest. By the time they reached the ranch house, her skin felt too tight, like it no longer fit properly. That night she dreamed she was running on 4 legs through silver grass. And when she woke, there were pine needles in her hair. Kestrel stood at her bedroom window, watching the full moon rise over the mountains. 3 days had passed since her experience in the forest, and each night brought stranger dreams and stronger urges she didn't understand. Her reflection in the glass looked different, somehow wilder, more alive, her eyes holding depths that seemed to glow in the moonlight. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Coyote entered, carrying something wrapped in deep blue velvet. He moved with that predatory grace that was becoming more pronounced each day, as if he too was changing, becoming more than he had been. "It's time," he said simply. "Time for what?" Instead of answering, he unwrapped the bundle, revealing the most beautiful dress Kestrel had ever seen. It was the color of starlight and shadow, made from fabric that seemed to shift and flow like water. Silver threads were embroidered throughout in patterns that hurt to look at, directly spirals and knots and symbols that spoke to something deep in her bones. Where did this come from? It belonged to your mother, and her mother before her. He held it up to the lamplight, and the silver threads caught fire with inner light. Esperanza has been keeping it safe, waiting for you to be ready. Kestrel reached out to touch the fabric and gasped as power tingled up her arm. Ready for what? For the choice? Coyote's voice was gentle but serious. You can stay as you are mostly. Human, mostly ordinary. Live out your indenture. Earn your freedom in 7 years. Go back to the world you knew. No one would blame you for choosing safety. Or you can accept what you are. Fully. Completely. But once you make that choice, there's no going back. You'll be bound to this land, to its magic, to... He paused, his jaw tightening. To me. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Kestrel felt the wildness in her chest surge, responding to something in his voice, his scent, his very presence. What exactly are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to marry me. The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for days. Not just in the human way, but in the old way. The way your people have always bound themselves to the guardians of sacred places, guardian. She sank into the chair by the window, trying to process what he was telling her. That's what you are. What the voice in the forest called you? This valley has been my responsibility for 20 years. I protect it, keep its secrets, make sure its magic doesn't spill out into a world that isn't ready for it. He moved closer. Kneeling beside her chair? But a guardian without a mate is only half complete. I've been waiting for you, Kestrel. Waiting for you to come home. And if I say no... Pain flashed across his features so quickly she almost missed it. Then I honor your choice. You live here as my employee, nothing more. In 7 years, you're free to go. But the valley would lose its magic, eventually. Without both halves of the old compact, the barriers between worlds grow thin. The magic bleeds away, and the land dies. He reached out as if to touch her face, then let his hand fall. But I won't force you. The choice has to be yours. Kestrel stood and walked to the window again, looking out at the moonlit valley that had already begun to feel more like home than anywhere else she'd ever lived. Below in the yard, she could see Esperanza hanging lanterns from the porch posts. Other figures moved in the Shadows Ranch hands, she assumed, but doing what? What are they doing down there? Coyote joined her at the window, preparing, just in case. In case I say yes. Hoping you'll say yes. She turned to study his profile in the moonlight. What would it mean, really? This marriage? It would mean you belong here, permanently. It would mean the magic in your blood would wake fully, and you'd be able to use it consciously. It would mean... double quotes he swallowed hard. It would mean I could love you openly instead of pretending this is just about indenture and employment. The simple honesty of his words hit her like a physical blow. You love me? You barely know me? I've known you in dreams for years. I felt your presence growing stronger as you grew into your power. When I saw you on that auction block today... He shook his head. It wasn't just rescue, Kestrel. It was recognition. She looked down at the dress in her hands, feeling its power pulse against her skin. Below, more lanterns appeared in the yard, creating a circle of warm light in the darkness. I put this on, she said slowly. What happens then? Then you become who you were always meant to be. The wildness in her chest surged, and for the first time in her life, Kestrel didn't try to push it down. Help me into it, she said. The dress transformed Kestrel into something that barely seemed human. As the starlight fabric settled around her body, power flowed through her like liquid fire. Her skin took on a subtle luminescence. Her hair darkened to true black and seemed to move with its own breeze. and her eyes became pools of silver that reflected more light than should have been possible. Esperanza appeared in the doorway as if summoned, carrying a crown of twisted silver and moonstone. "Mia," she breathed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "You look just like your mother did on her wedding night." "You knew her?" "I was there when she bound herself to your father's guardian, before the fear and hatred drove them away." Esperanza's hands were gentle as she placed the crown on Kestrel's head. "I swore to her I would watch for you, help you find your way home." Kestrel looked in the mirror and saw a stranger looking back, someone wild and powerful and beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with human standards. "I'm scared," she admitted, Good Coyote said from behind her. He'd changed as well, trading his work clothes for a long coat of midnight blue. His hair loose around his shoulders, and his eyes holding depths that seemed to contain entire starfields. "Fear means you understand what you're choosing," he offered. Her, his arm, and together they walked downstairs and out into the night. The yard had been transformed into something magical. Dozens of lanterns hung from posts and tree branches, their warm light creating a circle around a space that had been cleared of grass and scattered with flower petals. The ranch hands stood around the perimeter, but they looked different now, taller. Somehow their faces holding the same otherworldly beauty that she saw in Coyote's. "What are they?" she whispered. "Like us. It's people who chose magic over ordinary life." He led her to the center of the circle, where Esperanza waited with an ancient-looking book in her hands. "Dearly beloved," Esperanza began, her voice carrying. "Clearly in the still air, we gather under the eye of the full moon to witness the binding of guardian and ward, of protector and protected, of two halves of a sacred whole." The words seemed to have physical weight, pressing against Kestrel's skin like warm honey. Round them, the very air began to shimmer with visible power. "Coyote Ravenscroft," Esperanza continued, "do you swear to guard this woman as you guard this land? To cherish her magic as you cherish the valley's secrets? To love her in all her forms, human and otherwise? I swear it." His voice was rough with emotion. Kestrel Nightwind. The name spilled from Esperanza's lips, as if she'd always known it. "Do you swear to bind your power to his? To help him guard this sacred place? To accept the wildness in your blood and let it make you what you truly are?" Kestrel's heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment of no return. She could still say no, still choose the safe path. Instead, she looked into Coyote's eyes and saw her future written there, running through moonlit forests on four legs, dancing in the ruins of ancient temples, raising children who would know magic as their birthright, growing old and wise in a place where time moved differently than in the outside world. "I swear it," she said. The moment the words left her lips, power exploded around them. The lanterns flared so bright they should have blinded everyone present. But instead they revealed the truth of what was happening. The valley itself was alive, responding to the completion of an ancient compact. Trees swayed without wind, flowers bloomed instantly and shed their petals like snow. And somewhere in the distance, wolves howled in celebration. Coyote pulled her close and kissed her as magic crackled around them like lightning. When their lips met, Kestrel felt the last of her human limitations fall away. The wildness in her chest exploded outward, transforming her completely. When they broke apart, she was laughing with pure joy. "I can feel everything," she gasped. "Every blade of grass, every sleeping bird, every heartbeat for miles around." "Welcome home," he whispered against her ear. The celebration lasted until dawn, filled with music that came from wind and leaves instead of instruments, food that tasted like sunlight and starshine, and dancing that defied the laws of gravity. As the sun rose over the mountains, Kestrel stood with her new husband on the porch of their home, watching the valley wake up around them. "No regrets?" Coyote asked, his arm around her waist. She thought of the life she'd left behind, the poverty, the limitations, the constant feeling that she was meant for something more. Then she looked at the magical valley spread before them, felt the power singing in her blood, and smiled. "None at all," she said. "I'm exactly where I belong." And in the morning light, with her true love beside her and magic flowing through, Her veins like sunlight, kestrel night wind was finally completely home.